Welcome to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you another video. And today, we're going to be doing Naruto Yokai Part 4, What If Sasuke Uchiha Was a Girl? It's very fun to be going back to this series as it's one that I haven't done in a while since we've been really catching up with What If Naruto Was in High School DxD. As far as the uploading schedule for videos that are going to be coming out this week, I've decided to go back to doing a one video per day schedule, simply because it's a lot easier and it's a lot less time consuming to try to put out two videos at once. Doing one video a day is a lot better in the long run simply because I can go a lot more in depth with my videos and it can be a lot more concise storytelling. As far as What If Naruto Was in High School DxD the movie, Part 2 will be coming out on Wednesday, and Part 3, the finale, will be coming out on Friday. And the other days of the week, we'll be continuing various stories that we have on the channel out right now. I'm also going to try to diversify everything and switch it up as much as I can, so that we're not always doing the same repetitive thing all the time, but that this channel can have variety and you guys can see what you like. Now, some days in the future, I might do two videos and some days I might not, but that's really just going to be depending on how I'm feeling or where I'm at with a particular story at any point in time. Again, thank you for supporting Power Core Productions and Podcastings. As always, cannot do it without you. You make the channel grow, you make the core grow. Cannot do it without you guys. So as always, thank you. And without further ado, relax, and enjoy the show. As Team 7 were heading back home from the land of waves, Naruto would tell Satomi of his meeting with the nine-tailed fox. He would tell her, while it was brief, the nine-tails was rather intimidating, making it very clear that the only reason he gave a small portion of his power to Naruto was to allow him to live, noting that if he were to die, his own life would be extinguished as well. Satomi would tell Naruto to keep this between them and to not get anyone else involved, and Naruto would do so, knowing that whenever Satomi suggested anything, it was for his own best interest. Not much would change from the original canon during the 2 months. While Naruto and Satomi would continue their training whenever they weren't doing missions with Team 7, Satomi would get a better feel for a two-Tomoe Sharingan, training with Naruto as he proved to be a good training partner, and Naruto would get a better feel for his wind-style ninjutsu. While it was only the Gale Palm and the Air Bullet, when combined with the Shadow Clones, they proved to be rather effective, and thus, with the two training off of one another, they would see a slight increase in their strength, speed, and overall skills. Sakure would not be slacking off in the meantime. As stated before in this story, because Satomi, the former Sasuke, is now a girl, Sakura never had anyone to pine after in the academy, so she put more work into her studies in trying to be a better kunoichi. Almost in a twist of fate, rather than Sakura admiring the Uchiha, she only wished to crush the Uchiha, and improved her skills to do so. Kakashi was able to help her develop her skills in genjutsu, as well as discovering her affinity for earth style and water style. So she would add a few jutsu to her arsenal. In terms of genjutsu, he would teach her something that was pretty basic, but something she could take advantage of, especially given her namesake, the Hell Cherry Blossom Technique Level 1. Along with that, she would also learn the Earth Style Mud Wall and the Earth Style Mud Swamp, on top of already having the Water Style Water Dragon Jutsu. While she would start to delve into the Hell Cherry Blossom Level 2 technique, that technique did require a lot more chakra potency, forcing her to have to increase her chakra reserves. Kakashi would suggest doing more weightlifting and doing more long distance running. While Sakura wasn't too fond of it, she didn't want to be left behind by Satomi, so she would undergo her own personal training as well. Of course, outside of team training, Team 7 mostly kept to themselves, although the camaraderie was rather decent. Satomi and Sakura weren't always at each other's throats, but their rivalry still remained strong, neither Kunoichi wanting to yield to the other, and Naruto playing more of the peacemaker between the two. However, the two girls would come together for one thing. Whenever Naruto did something extremely stupid or dumb, they didn't hesitate to both clobber him upside the head, Naruto feeling double the ire of both girls whenever his pranks or antics went a bit too far. Time would soon pass, and Kakashi would tell his team of the upcoming, allowing them to compete as he had nominated them. All three would be looking forward to the opportunity, especially with something that had occurred earlier. While Naruto and Sakura were walking to a meeting area for Team 7, they would come across Konohamaru and his friends, who had accidentally stumbled into some sound ninja. Naruto, being able to move swiftly, was able to get Kankuro a beating. Not too severe, but pushing him far back enough with a gale palm to save Konohamaru. Kankuro, being angered by this, was preparing to unleash his puppet onto Naruto unsuspectingly, but was stopped when his younger brother Gaara arrived to put him in his place. Both they and Temari would introduce themselves, revealing that they had come to the Leaf for the Chunin exams, and Gaara could sense a strong presence within Naruto, stating that the two were rather similar. He would also detect Satomi, who was sitting up in the trees, reading a book, and waiting to make herself known as well. The groups would exchange looks with one another, unknown that they would meet once again later down the road. When the day of the Chunin exams came, Team 7 would arrive to the testing area as assigned by Kakashi. However, when they arrived, they would see a large crowd gathering around the exam room. They were trying to get in, but they were being stopped by two genin who looked rather familiar. Satomi, using her Sharingan, was able to see through the genjutsu, realizing that it was none other than Izumo and Kotetsu, the guardians of the Konoha Gate. She would tell her other teammates what were going on, Naruto wondering why the gate guards were here of all times, and why they were disguised as young genin of all things. Sakura and Satomi would be able to see through it rather quickly, and thus they would tell Naruto their reason for being there, that this was most likely a test. It was during these times that the words Kakashi had spoken would come to mind to all three, that a ninja must see through deception. This was one of those deceptions. Satomi and Sakura were able to see that they were in the genjutsu, and most likely not on the 3rd floor. But this would be where another major change would occur in the story. Unlike her male counterpart, Satomi, being a female, actually does change many things. Of course, she still has the heart of the Uchiha and can have Sasuke's tendencies, but as we all know, girls tend to be a bit more perceptive than men, not always having a strong macho bravado, so to speak. Unlike Sasuke in the original timeline, who merely revealed the genjutsu to prove his superiority, Satomi would see and think it'd be wise not to do so, noting that if they were going up against competition, the last thing they needed was to let every single weakling participate, and it would only slow them down. Whoever was smart enough would be able to see through it and go to the top. As such, Team 7 would walk back out the door and take another route to the 3rd floor, the real 3rd floor. What this changes is the number of teams that advance to the Chunin exams. Unlike in the original, where 150 teams had advanced to the first round, I can make a good estimate that about 50% of those teams don't make it through the initial trap. Thus, the number of teams go from 153 to 75, around a 51% decrease in the number of teams that advance. Or for a better perspective, 459 participants drops to 225. That number would be important for later in the story. As Team 7 would make it to the room with the select few who were able to advance among the basic trick, they would also be greeted by the rest of the Konoha rookies, that being Team 8 and Team 9 respectively. Again, unlike in the original timeline, there's a lot less animosity between the teams, mainly because Naruto and Satomi were friends instead of being heated rivals like Naruto and Sasuke. Satomi was able to teach Naruto basic forms of etiquette, so he wasn't a total loser in the academy, and instead he actually did have a few friends like Shikamaru, Choji, and even Shino and Hinata were decent to talk to. Of course, his main rival was none other than Kiba Inuzuka. With Satomi being a female, and there no being Sasuke Uchiha in this timeline, Kiba basically rose through the ranks and became the Rookie of the Year, standing among all of the male counterparts in Naruto's class, and being the one that Naruto wanted to beat. While Kiba will hold the advantage over Naruto, it wouldn't be by much. Whenever they sparred, Kiba would usually win around 90% of their matches. However, after Naruto took more of his training seriously, that number increased a little. Naruto would get a few wins here and there. However, Kiba would be quick to snuff out Naruto's flame, so Naruto had a goal to surpass in his initial stages. While the Rookie 9 would be talking amongst themselves, an unknown boy would appear to meet them. The boy having a bowl cut and bushy eyebrows. He would come with a smile and reveal himself to be Rock Lee, and he would walk over to Hinata to see how she was doing. You see, another change that occurred in this timeline was that because Naruto spent his time with Satomi, he was never walking around alone all the time, and as such, he didn't come across Hinata one night while she were being bullied. But there was another young man who did. That man was Rock Lee. Now, all of the attributes that you could say Hinata would love about Naruto, you can easily add those attributes to Rock Lee in this story. Rock Lee is just as much of an underdog as Naruto was, and even more so, because he cannot use ninjutsu or genjutsu, Hinata being aware of this, but still seeing the splendid shinobi that Rock Lee was becoming. As such, a budding friendship and potential romance could be grown from this. And as such, Rock Lee took a special interest in Hinata, and Hinata the same with Rock Lee. While they would be talking amongst themselves, Kiba acting proud and arrogant amongst the rookies, and Naruto and him butting heads as usual, it wouldn't take long for them to make a ruckus, and that would be when Kabuto Yakushi would arrive. As he would approach them, telling them that they were drawing a lot of attention to themselves out of the ringers of the tuning exam, and that this wouldn't be a good idea. He would tell them about the inner workings of the tuning exams, how they were held twice a year, and how this was his 7th try. He would talk about how dangerous it was, and reveal the information that he had gathered on the other participants. When he shows the ninja info cards, Satomi would ask about Gaara, wondering if he had a card for him. He would reveal Gaara's card, which would be the same, 8 C ranks and 1 B rank for a Genin. And among his notable stats, it would be revealed that he had never been injured in a fight, not once. He would also reveal about a new and strange village that had emerged, and how 3 of them were participating in the exams, ninja from the Sound Village, who upon hearing this would be quick to attack Kabuto. However, Rock Lee and Naruto would quickly step in, pushing them back just a bit. Before the fight could get any more serious, their first proctor, Ibiki Marino, would arrive as the first exam of the Chunin exams would begin, and this would be a written test. Mostly everyone would perform the same as in canon, and for how many things that have changed in this timeline so far, a lot still remains the same. That mainly being that Naruto still struggles with the writing test. Sure, he might have improved physically and with his ninjutsu and other attributes, but mentally he was still lacking in many areas. Of course, he wasn't a complete idiot, but complicated ninjutsu and strategy and written tests and things of that nature were still things that he would struggle with. Satomi and Sakura would be able to see through the real ploy of the exam, noting the proctors and the point deduction system. The test was literally designed for people to cheat and not get caught. Of course, Sakura was good enough to answer the questions on her own, so there was no real reason for her to cheat, and that doesn't change here. However, Satomi would realize that Naruto was going to need all the help that he could get, but she wasn't quite sure how she could help him, essentially since they were half a classroom apart while taking the test, and being caught cheating could spell disaster for their entire team. This is when Satomi would come up with her plan. Using the angling of some of the reflective surfaces in the room, she would make sure that her eyes, emblazoned with the Sharingan, would catch the attention of someone she believed would be useful to her plan. Making sure that no one was looking, she would activate her Sharingan, bouncing it off of one of the reflective surfaces on a desk and into someone's eye, putting them under a basic genjutsu. Nothing special or fancy, in fact she wasn't all too proficient at doing so, but it was to last just long enough to put her plan into fruition. She would cause the user under the genjutsu to write down all of the answers that she had already placed on her test, as well as a particular note for Naruto. She would then have him erase his name on the test and put Naruto's name, before then spazzing out and jumping over to attack Naruto, who was none the wiser as to what was going on. The proctors would have to try to pry him off, and papers would just go flying in the air. It would be confusion and chaos for a brief moment. As the papers went flying everywhere, Satomi would make sure that in the midst of the chaos, that the one under genjutsu would make sure to place his paper where Naruto's used to be, taking Naruto's original test and destroying it in the midst of the pandemonium. This would lead to him and his teammates getting kicked out, and as everyone was being resituated, Naruto would look down upon his test with all the answers filled, along with a note from Satomi, telling him the truth of what the test was really about, and now Naruto was completely aware, and he would be extremely thankful, feeling his heart skip a beat for just a moment, that even in a situation like this, Satomi was still looking out for it. From here, not much would change from the original story. The 10th question would still be asked, and Naruto would still answer it proudly, and his team would advance. However, the next part that changes, and this is something to take note of from before, is that because only 75 teams advanced, this means that the number of teams that advance to the next round would be even smaller, going from 75 to 36. From there, Anko would arrive and lead the next group into the Forest of Death, this being where the second stage of the Chunin exams would take place. From here, not much would change from the original story. Everyone would still be given a Heaven and an Earth scroll respectively, and they would be given the goal to reach the tower in the middle of the forest within 5 days, and not peek at the scrolls, as those were the rules. Team 7 would be given the Heaven Scroll and would make their way through the forest, still running into Oboro and the Rain Ninja, defeating them and retrieving the Earth Scroll that they needed with their Heaven Scroll. Naruto would put both scrolls into his pouch, and the team would rush straight towards the tower. However, as they were doing so, a large snake would appear out of nowhere, attacking Naruto and swallowing him whole as it fell into the forest floor below. From here, Satomi and Sakura would come face to face with a mysterious grass ninja. The grass ninja would place Satomi and Sakura under a paralysis jutsu, striking much fear into them as they could feel the killing intent oozing off of their opponent. Satomi would have no choice but to stab herself in the leg to awaken herself, and Sakura as well. The two would attempt to run away as best they could, but they wouldn't be able to get too far, as the grass ninja would seemingly keep up with them. Down in the forest, Naruto would be inside the belly of the snake. Creating multiple shadow clones and each clone creating an air bullet, they would easily burst out of the snake's belly before heading up to meet with Satomi and Sakura. As the two girls were struggling to escape the grass ninja, Naruto would arrive in just the near thick of time, pushing the grass ninja back and reconvening with his team. While the two girls would be fearful, especially Sakura and even Satomi, who could feel that their lives were truly in danger, Naruto would tell his teammates calmly that they could handle any situation. As long as they worked together and fought as one, there was nothing that they couldn't do. Satomi would feel a newfound bound of confidence. She knew that she had to be able to step forward. If she couldn't defeat powerful ninja now, then how were she and Naruto ever going to defeat Itachi? How are they ever going to fulfill their dreams? They couldn't afford to run away from every situation their whole life. They were going to have to stay and stand their ground. And Sakura, she had confidence in her teammates, and she was proud to stand beside them. As the grass ninja would turn to the three, asking them if they were going to run or stay and fight, Team 7 would boldly declare that they were going to fight and that they were going to win. Team 7 would engage with the grass ninja, performing rather admirably and doing everything that they could in their power to win. Satomi with her two Tomoe Sharingan and Naruto with his clones acting as distractions, while Sakura would fight from a distance, trying to place the enemy under genjutsu, as well as using some of her long-range attacks. Of course, the Hell Cherry Blossom genjutsu, it only lasted for a few seconds on the outside and was very mentally draining, but for the genjutsu itself, it can make the user feel as if they were in another world. What would pass to be a few seconds in the real world could prove to be 40 or 50 hours in the genjutsu, where it seemed like it was a never-ending fight between Satomi and Naruto and the grass ninja, until eventually they had her pinned against the tree. Satomi pulling on the ninja wire, and Naruto being so drained that he was actually starting to delve into some of the Kyuubi's chakra, his eyes even morphing into that of the Nine-Tails. With the grass ninja now tied up to the tree, Naruto would create a Kyuubi-enhanced air bullet, and Satomi a great fireball jutsu, the two jutsus combining into the Inferno Blast, incinerating the entire tree, the two believing that they had actually won the fight. However, their victory would be short-lived, as from out of the burning debris, the snake ninja, his skin would begin to melt, and revealing their true opponent to be none other than the rogue Sannin, Orochimaru. Orochimaru would commend Team 7, all of them for being rather impressive. Even in his own mind, he couldn't help but remember the time when his own team had to face a powerful shinobi, that being Hanzo the Salamander. Although now the table had now turned, and Orochimaru was in the place of Hanzo. While he would commend them all, he would state that he were going to bestow upon them a gift. As he would stretch out his long neck, Naruto would try to get in the way. However, Orochimaru would quickly knock him to the ground, before biting on Satomi's neck, the girl screaming out in pain as the curse mark would begin to take hold. Naruto would be even more enraged, delving into more of the Kyuubi's power, as he would try to launch his attack on Orochimaru as well. However, before he could get a chance, Orochimaru would easily bind them and hold them in the air. Seeing the Kyuubi being a potential problem, he would place the 5-pronged seal on Naruto on top of his 8-gram seal, thus putting the Kyuubi's chakra in check. As Naruto could feel he were about to collapse, Orochimaru would place a curse mark onto him as well. He would finally turn his attention to Sakura. However, before he could place a mark on her, the Anbu would be coming from a distance. Orochimaru having no choice but to run, he would leave her with a warning that his henchmen would be coming for them soon, and that she best get a move on, as he would disappear into the forest below. Sakura, now taking Satomi and Naruto, would try to find a place to rest and treat their wounds, noting that Naruto and Satomi had both been put into a coma. While Satomi and Naruto would be passed out, the mark having it ever stronger grow on Satomi, Naruto's mark would slowly begin to burn away, as deep within his subconscious, as the avatar of Orochimaru would be walking within the chambers, the nine-tailed fox would send out his aura, destroying the influence of Orochimaru, as he were already in the host of such a body. And thus, Naruto's mark would disappear. Not too long after, the Sound Ninja, who had been sent by Orochimaru, would make their way towards Satomi and Naruto. Sakura would create her traps and try her best to fend them off, even managing to go as far as to take out Ken, dispelling her genjutsu and shooting out a large wave of a water dragon jutsu, knocking the girl out cold. However, Zaku and Dosu would easily be able to beat down on Sakura. Even with the aid of Rock Lee, the two would still be overwhelmed, until Team 8 got involved to provide the distraction. However, in the midst of the battle, a now awakened Satomi would re-emerge into the fight, half her body covered in strange black markings. With an uncontrollable amount of dark chakra forming around her, she would effortlessly take out Zaku, going as far as to not only break his arms, but to rip one straight out of its socket, causing him to bleed out profusely as he tried to stop the wound. Before she could do even more damage, however, Naruto had managed to awaken to see what were happening, as he would stop her by pulling her into a hug, telling her that that was enough and that she didn't have to do anymore. The dark chakra would slowly subside from her, as it would begin to fade, and she would turn back to normal. Dosu would give his scroll in exchange for their lives, taking Zaku and Ken and disappearing into the night. As everyone would reconvene before leaving to go their separate ways, Naruto as well as the others of Team 7 having just enough strength, they knew that they needed to just go straight to the tower, since they had both of their scrolls anyway. Thankfully, since Orochimaru didn't take them, Team 7 would rush and make their way straight towards the tower as soon as possible, getting there a full 3 days ahead of schedule. With the extra time after meeting with Iruka Sensei, they would book it straight towards Kakashi and Lord Third, telling them everything that had happened. Satomi would be taken by Kakashi immediately to have the curse seal placed on her, and she would be given time to rest before the next part of the exams would begin. In the meantime, Naruto and Sakura would be waiting on Satomi to awaken, and during this time, Naruto would tell Sakura his secret, telling her that he was the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. That way, Team 7 didn't have any secrets between them, and Sakura would appreciate Naruto being honest and being open, as Naruto had seen firsthand how much growth Sakura had undergone, and that it wouldn't be right to just keep her out of the loop during certain things. After all, they were a team now, and they had to be able to look out for one another and trust each other. Satomi would then awaken not too long after, and Naruto would explain how he told Sakura the truth. Satomi would be fine with this, as after all, she and Sakura were starting to get on good terms. They would still bicker and argue, after all, and they were rivals. But in the end, before all of that, they were Konoha Shinobi, and Konoha Shinobi always look out for one another. With the 3 days, they would have a chance to truly rest and recollect themselves after everything that they had been through, giving them enough time to replenish their chakra as well. Unlike in the original timeline, where they basically had to fight through the forest for 5 whole days, and then go into the preliminaries not too soon after, having little time to recover their strength, Team 7 actually has a chance to rest and unwind for just a few days, giving them a chance to regather themselves so that they can be ready for what's to come. In the meantime, Kabuto would learn that the Leaf had placed an order to hunt down the Sound Ninja, and at the orders of Orochimaru, he would stay behind in the forest. As he would find the three cooped up under a tree, the three looking up to Kabuto wondering what their next order was going to be by Orochimaru, Kabuto would reveal that he had been given orders to kill them so that they couldn't be interrogated. Dosu would try to fight off Kabuto, the key word being try, as he would slaughter all three of them, disposing of their bodies and making sure that they were never seen again. From there, everyone would arrive to the main hall as the preliminaries would be introduced for the tuning exams, as Hayato, the proctor, would reveal that they still had too many participants and they had to scale down before the finals could take place. The third Hokage would reveal the meaning behind the tuning exams, how in a way it was viewed as a mini war between nations, and how this was a way to keep the balance of power. With all of that taken into consideration, the preliminaries would basically be one-on-one fights, and that the final group remaining from the initial preliminary rounds would advance to the third and final rounds of the tuning exams. In place of the Sound Ninja would be Team Oboro from the Rain Village, and Kabuto would still drop out as in canon, thus leaving the number to 20, so that the final number would be 10. For this part in the exams, I have decided to randomize all of the fights to take place. Of course, a handful that came out were still the ones that happened in canon, and personally, the story is all the more better for it. But these are the re-envisioned fights that take place in the tuning exams. In the first preliminary round, Kankuro is matched up with Ino. Ino would weigh her options, but ultimately she would decide to drop out, realizing that whoever Kankuro was, she just didn't stand a chance against him. Of course, she was a capable shinobi, but against someone like Kankuro, she just isn't going to stand that much of a chance, and there's no point in going into a fight you can't win. The next fight is Temari versus Tenten. You know how that fight ended in canon, so there's no reason for it to change now. Tenten gets destroyed, and Temari advances to the finals. Next would be Naruto versus Kagari, one of the Rain Ninja from Team Oboro. Since he isn't really all that important, I imagine he would put up a decent fight, and Naruto with the 5-pronged seal on him would have a little bit of a handicap, but it's nothing that Naruto can't really overcome. He's stronger, faster, and has more techniques, so ultimately Naruto gets the win. Next would be Gaara versus Yoroi. As the fight would start, Yoroi would touch some of Gaara's sand. Feeling that it had chakra, he would absorb it and the sand would fall into nothing. Thinking that Gaara was controlling the sand with mere chakra, he would invite Gaara to wrap him in the sand, feeling that he could absorb it all. However, this would prove to be his ultimate demise, as Gaara would crush him with the sand, faster than he could absorb. With one swift sand coffin, Yoroi is completely destroyed. There is nothing left at all, no body, because his entire body had been grounded up by the sand, down to the blood, and all of it was placed back into the gourd. Everyone in the room would be absolutely shocked and appalled, but there was nothing more that could be said. Gaara was an absolute monster. The next fight, the fight that no one saw coming, would be Satomi versus Sakura. As the two kunoichi would stand face to face, Sakura would remark that for all the growth that they had had, this was ultimately what she wanted, an opportunity to defeat the Uchiha once and for all. And Satomi would tell her to hold nothing back, as the two would engage in combat. Satomi would time her tricks, as well as trying her best to evade Sakura's main maneuvers, thinking that she were getting the better of her through the entire exchange. However, Sakura would reveal that she had placed her traps just right to try to throw off the Sharingan. She would purposefully throw a weak and flimsy genjutsu for Satomi to break, over and over again, Satomi believing that Sakura wasn't really getting how good she was at breaking through genjutsu. She would continue to do so until eventually, when Sakura sprang her real genjutsu, it would be so potent and effective that Satomi wouldn't be able to see through it at first, thinking that she were about to hit Sakura. She would actually be tricked, as when she landed a punch on Sakura, her fist actually began to hurt, realizing that she had hit the wall instead of Sakura. Sakura had basically placed her under a genjutsu, and as soon as she dispelled it, she would just reinstate the genjutsu once again, turning it on and off at random times, doing it just quick enough so that the Sharingan couldn't detect it. Satomi would have to be careful, not knowing when she was really fighting Sakura or actually just caught in a genjutsu trap, while Sakura would continue to wear down and defeat on her opponent. While Sakura would eventually try to go for the finishing blow, Satomi would just narrowly dodge, enacting her full power of the Sharingan. She would decide to end the fight as quickly as possible. Hitting Sakura with a series of barrages and kicks, she would perform the Lion's Barrage, knocking Sakura out cold and getting the win. Many would be surprised and would even give a small standing ovation for Sakura. Of course, it wasn't as if they didn't think that Satomi would win, but it was the fact that of all of their fights, Sakura had never pushed Satomi this far, and the fact that Satomi was pushed this far while using the Sharingan was proof enough of how far her skills had come. Even as Sakura was being carted off by the medics, Satomi would silently thank Sakura, stating that she were indeed a worthy opponent and she were happy to defeat her. The next fight would be Neji versus Hinata, which still ends the same way as it did in canon. While Naruto would be a bit upset at Neji for how much he spoke down on Hinata and truly didn't dislike the guy, in the end, the one who took it to heart would be Rock Lee, who would vow to himself to defeat his teammate at all costs, because he could handle the taunts by the Hyuga, but when he disrespected Hinata and beat her down the way that he did, Rock Lee had to hold everything back. So much more so that Guy Sensei had to personally hold Rock Lee, because he knew full well that if Rock Lee attempted to attack Neji, it might end up being a murder. The next fight would be Misumi, the ninja with the ability to stretch his limbs, versus Shino. Misumi would think that Shino would be easy to defeat, especially once he was able to wrap around him. However, this would prove to be detrimental, as Shino would reveal his insect technique, and that the Shino he had wrapped around were actually an insect clone, as the insects would begin to swarm Misumi, absorbing him of all of his chakra and making him very weak and vulnerable. Shino, with some well-placed attacks, would take him out, and would get the victory. The next match would be Kiba versus Mubi, one of the Rain Ninja. Kiba would be able to get the win. With the help of Akamaru, who could sniff out the genjutsu, he would be able to win with a fang over fang, defeating Mubi rather easily and advancing to the finals. The ninth match would be Choji versus Rock Lee. Rock Lee would respect Choji in his strength, the power of the Akamichi clan, and the two would have an honest fight. Choji would use the expansion jutsu in the human bulldozer. However, Rock Lee would be easily able to reverse it, using a primary lotus and kicking the larger shinobi into the air, before eventually beating him into the ground. It would be quick and simple, but it would be a rather hard-hitting affair, and in the end, Rock Lee would pick up Choji and thank him for such a good fight. And then finally, the 10th battle would be Oboro versus Shikamaru. Oboro's genjutsu would be pretty crafty, however, Shikamaru would be able to place him under the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu, sticking him in one spot and doing what he did to Ken similar as to in canon. He would move his shadow in such a way to slam his head against the wall, knocking him out cold and rendering him unconscious, giving Shikamaru the win and advancing to the finals. With the 10 winners now declared, at this part in the story, I've personally decided to arrange the fights in a particular order so that I could truly tell a much more unique story. The first match would be Naruto, who drew number 1, versus his rival, Kiba, who drew number 2. The two getting a chance to settle the score from their days in the academy, to see who truly was the top dog in the class. Neji would draw number 3, and he would face the winner of a 4v5, who would be fighting in a wild card. Since all 10 have advanced, I've decided to have 2 wild card matches. This will be against 4 and 5 and 9 and 10, and the winners of the wild card advance to a final 8, if you will. That way we get a much more even and concise tournament. So Neji at number 3 will get to face the winner of 4 and 5 from a wild card match in the first round. Rock Lee has number 4, and Kankuro will draw number 5. Satomi would have 6, and Gar would have 7, and Shino at number 8 would face the winner of the 9v10 wildcard match, and that match would be Temari versus Shikamaru. The full bracket of the tournament would be as follows. First, there will be the 2 wildcard matches. This will determine the ones who will advance to the first round officially. From there, the first round would commence with Naruto versus Kiba, Neji versus either Rock Lee or Kankuro, Satomi versus Gar, and Shino versus either Temari or Shikamaru. The third Hokage would announce that they would have 1 month to train, to hone or practice new skills, and learn some new tricks, as everyone had already seen what they could do in the preliminary rounds. Being given 1 month's time, everyone would go their separate ways to prepare for the Chunin exams. Naruto would want to go with Satomi to train. However, Kakashi would reveal that he was going to be training her one-on-one personally, along with some help, as Kakashi needed someone else to help him with Satomi's training. That someone was going to be Anko. Anko, wanting to be very close to Satomi, a fellow girl who had also been lured by Orochimaru, wanted to try to steer her away from that path, and as such, she'd requested to be with Kakashi in her training. However, Kakashi would not leave Naruto alone, as he did want to find a teacher for Naruto, that teacher being none other than Ebisu. Of course, Naruto didn't really care too much to train with Ebisu, as Ebisu were one of the Shininja who always looked down on him. However, he would give it a chance, since Kakashi did state that Ebisu was a Jonin elite. This would happen the same as in canon, their training not going too far before Naruto would meet a certain silver-haired ninja. That ninja who would prove to be one of the other legendary Sannin, although what he was doing was not very shinobi-like at all, as he would be caught by Naruto and Ebisu peeping in the women's bath. This shinobi, and someone who would prove to be Naruto's lifelong friend, would be none other than the Toad Sage himself, Jiraiya. This is going to conclude What If Sasuke Uchiha Was a Girl, Naruto Yokai, Part 4. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of this video. I'm Javon Harrington of Power Core Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.